Hello, this is Mark. Can you hear me? Hello, this is Mark. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mark.
Oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. They just didn't have me in as a member.
Mark,
Yes, can you hear me?
what is yeah, we can hear you. What is that painting behind your head there?
I don't know. I'm staying with a friend to recover from my surgery yesterday.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, Mr. Camp, would you like to start the meeting, please, sir?
Okay. Can everybody hear me remotely?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mark and Larry. Hope you're doing well. First, I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know it's kind of odd. My wife asked, why are you having a Wednesday meeting? Because I know we don't usually meet on Wednesdays. We've got the planning department here. We are very, very excited to take this first step towards creating a new comprehensive land use plan for the town of Matthews and a new downtown plan. Going back to earlier this year, you all directed staff to issue an RFP. We received 8 responses, and the 2 firms you're hearing from this evening, the first is Land Design and Stewart, and the second will be Cole Janess Stone and several other sub-consultants. We've set aside, so our plan of action is we've got an hour set aside for each group, and we've got 30 minutes for presentations, followed by up to 30 minutes for Q&A. Then after both of these firms have presented, if you all want to kind of talk about each firm afterwards, you're welcome to do that when we conclude the 2 presentations. So that's kind of our plan of action. Also, I did send to you all several items in email yesterday. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them. It was our scoring sheet, rankings. You've got rankings and some of the general comments from the internal committee that ranked each of these, as well as you've got copies of each RFP response. So that should be a little bit of a background for everyone, and happy to answer any questions if you have any for me. And if not, I'll turn it over to Land Design Stewart.
Any questions? I think we're good to go.
All right, thank you. That should be slides.
So you'll put it up, is that right? Okay. You want to make it full screen? Let me show you how. Are you going to control L?
Yeah, there we go.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for meeting with us tonight. We're very happy to be here. And we really had hoped to keep this a little bit informal. I know it's a very formal setup, so it's hard to be informal, but that's really our intention. I hope you have had a chance to look at our proposal. In our proposal, it talks a lot about our work and some of the projects that we've done. Underneath a lot of the projects, there are QR codes that you can click on when we're not talking, but I hope you do listen to us. But look at the QR codes and it takes you to some further information about our plans and our process and some of the products that we produce. So we really hope in the next half hour to really talk about us, like our approach in terms of how we think about things. What is our perspective and our philosophy, and how would we approach working on these two plans, and how would we work together? So that's how we hope to use the next half hour, and then the Q&A. So quickly, we're gonna all introduce ourselves. So I am Beth Poovey. I am a landscape architect at Land Design. At Land Design, I've been there about 23 years, and I lead the public sector work. So I lead work with most of my clients are municipalities like yours. And I work in parks and open space and downtown historic streetscapes. So that's my sort of focus. And I have a team of folks who support me. And Richard, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, Richard Petersheim. Know many of you from working on several projects in town. I'm a landscape architect as well, one of the partners of Land Design, been there 35 years. And my role in this will kind of be like a stakeholder alignment in urban design function, where I'm trying to understand the best of how the public perceives opportunities as well as the private side. And then Mr. Jake.
Hello, my name is Michelle Podeswa. I have just joined Land Design in the last year, but I have over 20 years of experience in the public transportation world. And so really I'm filling a new role here at Land Design that's really a focus on public transportation. So I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank y'all.
And my name is Jake Petrosky. I am a director of community planning at Stewart. 20 years of planning experience, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, Virginia. Actually worked with Land Design for a number of years and lead a team of about 8 folks on the community planning group. Stewart as a firm is a bigger firm and has other disciplines that we pull from on occasion, landscape architecture and civil engineering, among others. I'm going to introduce Todd Noel as well. He works out of Atlanta with Noel Consulting Group, and he's going to lead the market analysis, market assessment piece of this plan, and we'll talk about that. Basically, we've worked, both firms, Land Design and Stewart, have worked with Todd on a number of projects, and he brings a perspective that is really valuable. He talks about, and he's able to really have his finger on trends, market trends, demand, future demand, in terms of housing and jobs and commercial space and that sort of thing. And he makes our plans better because they're more realistic in terms of understanding what's coming down the pike and how to leverage that for great places. So if you can go to the next slide there, or actually I can do it. One of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is the value of this team coming together and the value of a simultaneous process. I'm really excited that you all had the option to pair these efforts together. And I think that one of the reasons why we team together is because we've done this sort of thing before a number of times. Comp plans and downtown plans together, and comp plans with focus on downtown plan or that sort of thing. So we will be delivering 2 standalone deliverables, the downtown plan and comp plan, but it's a 3-phase process to get us there. Stewart will lead the comp plan process. Land Design will lead the downtown master plan. There's a shared approach to a number of key tasks that is going to result in efficiency and frankly, just a better plan that's more unified and direct and geared towards implementation. So we'll have a shared approach to data collection and analysis, public engagement, and a number of other tasks. One of the things that is important to note is these are not two distinct teams that won't work together. We actually intend on leveraging personnel from land design for the comp plan to leverage their strengths in the form of parks and urban design and transportation. And likewise, land design will leverage folks on the Stewart team for certain things that we're really good at. Maybe it's roadway design, or maybe it's policy implementation, UDO rewriting, the regulatory side of things downtown. Also, we have some expertise on parks and some history in working with the town on parks and design and planning and bike ped planning as well that we can kind of leverage. So together we make a team that's pretty well rounded and capable of doing what needs to be done. The first part of this planning effort is really discovery. And this is where we establish a shared baseline between us and then also you all, the planning board, also stakeholders and citizens on what are the trends, what are we doing well, what needs to be addressed, and how to create a more vibrant and resilient community. And really, one of the things that we'll do during this first phase is a little bit of education and talk about how this is such a significant planning effort. It happens at a key point in time, really a pivot point in the town's history. A lot has changed since the 2012 land use plan and previous studies for downtown. And where you are at now is very different. And what we determine and recommend in this plan will really guide growth and development, infrastructure investments, downtown and elsewhere, really for the next 20 years. So you all are already a desirable place to live and work and visit and play, but to really think long-term and put yourself even in a better place in 20 years and make you the most desirable place in the region to live and work and play is what we're shooting for, and really create quality places. So downtown is crucial, but also other key places in town, and build long-term value is really the focus of the effort. So a couple themes that have been mentioned in the visioning effort previously, in the previous plans, and in the RFP, things that we're conscious of is how to attract quality development while maintaining kind of a small town charm that is in your vision statements throughout. How to respond to leverage the growth that could happen as part of the Silver Line, and also thinking about long-term fiscal health. The land use recommendations in this plan are really critical to the long-term economic health of the town, and determining a tax base that will allow for investment in quality of life infrastructure, things that people want to see, and things you need to do on the transportation side, that sort of thing. So that's a really important part of this, and addressing kind of existing issues like congestion through connectivity and other key investments will be part of moving forward. We mentioned Todd's role and the importance of this market assessment piece. I think one of the guiding things that go into that, and things that we've talked with Todd already, is land use should complement transit and support it, but it shouldn't really be the focus. I mean, you need a great place regardless of if you live on the Silver Line or if you don't. So that's something that we'll shoot for. Housing is something that's really important. The housing needs assessment that's currently being conducted by UNCC we'll be wrapping up in later on this fall, winter, and we can build on that. It will have some recommendations that we will be able to take and customize and include in the plan. So this will really be part of the implementation to that needs assessment. And how do we address housing? It's a couple-pronged approach, but one is looking at complementing your existing single-family base with a little bit more diversity from attached for-sale rental products in terms of townhomes and missing middle housing. thinking about where bigger stuff can and should go, what it should look like, how could it fit into the character of town, and is there a bigger role the town can play related to workforce and for affordable housing specifically. Another thing that is really critical from a market perspective is thinking about Independence Boulevard and other aging commercial centers, and how those retail centers can and should be redeveloped to appeal to a variety of tenants, and what it was the role of office in employment, and where those could go and who are the prospective tenants.
So Jake just went over some of the snapshot of what we see, like what are the things that are happening. And as we think through that, what are the things that you're facing? What is your vision that you've been working on? How does it relate to the trends and the market trends and the way people are experiencing where they live and work and how things have changed since COVID? We really think about these 5 topics. These are the 5 topics we want to go into a little bit more detail with you today. But we also think that structuring both of the planning process around these are really important. And so that's talking a little bit more about land use and how we leverage investments. So leveraging your public infrastructure investments to attract private development. We want to make sure that private investments are meeting the needs of quality of the place that you're trying to create into the future. And also the public infrastructure, and whether it's gray infrastructure or green infrastructure, what are some of the things that we really need to be thinking about when we think about infrastructure? And of course, how we're engaging in the community. We want to make sure that we are engaging a broad audience, a broad group of the community in innovative and fun ways, but we're getting really meaningful information, but also the key stakeholders. So all of you, steering committee, but also the development community, folks that can be partners in the future of Matthews. And then we want to touch on some implementation strategies. No plan is good if it's not implementable. So we're going to go into these just in a little bit more detail.
From a land use perspective, I think identifying areas of potential change and opportunity and spending more time on those areas is really going to be a focus. How do we mirror or match land use to transportation realities, existing and future capacity, that sort of thing. Leveraging parks and open space, and looking at improving equitable access of that. Building on downtown initiatives. I mean, you'll have a long history of downtown planning. Actually, Land Design did the 1995 downtown plan for Matthews, and some of the design guidelines Jay was saying they are still in use today. But a lot has changed since 1995. A lot has changed from even 2018, the most recent iteration of that. So building on that and updating kind of land use recommendations for downtown in those key areas, and how to foster a healthy public-private relationships that support that desirable development, which is really building quality place and not just what the market works elsewhere, but how do we make that into a quality place that is supportive of the long-term vision of the town. So a couple things that we could use to do that is have kind of a land use map. You all dealt with land use a little different in 2012 and talked about different areas, but we could knit together a number of recent small area planning efforts and utilize public feedback to get to a land use map and character areas. And those character areas, we really can talk about the style of development that we want to see. So land use types, site design, building types and scale, form and frontages can be emphasized to really act as a guide for redesigning decisions moving forward. Policy recommendations would complement that. And implementation on the land use side is really about, okay, how does your code work now? What is great about it? What works? What doesn't need to be changed, but what could be a little bit better? And laying the groundwork for that, even going so far as to specifying in the comprehensive plan some model ordinances or some priority amendments that would help your lives easier down the line and help implement the plan is part of the goal there. One of the things we do at Stewart and emphasize is data-driven and design-oriented planning. So data can go into the planning effort And part of that's analysis and part of it's meaningful public engagements, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But from a land use perspective, understanding the suitability of land and as well as people's preferences is going to be part of that. So what areas do have better access to transportation or more attractive from an economic perspective, or less attractive because of environmental resources. So some of that will be done, and we will help with that for the comp plan, also help inform the downtown plan from that perspective. And that's going to be informed by, stakeholder interviews, survey, steering committee, and public feedback. There's a lot that we can do now with GIS analysis and visualization to really visualize future development, offer alternatives and scenarios too, if that's something that's beneficial. I'm an authorized community vis consultant, and there was the Connect model that was done at the regional level that looked at different land use scenarios. Well, I've taken that model and created custom small area models and town models to answer questions and provide a spatial decision support tool at a local level that can really talk about the implications of existing policy, and allows us to say, okay, this is the good things that will result from that existing policy, or these some things that we need to change. And we can help use that to inform that land use planning and land use recommendations. And then from, a more urban design perspective, ArcGIS Urban, there's other tools that can kind of visualize future development downtown, and land design is very skilled at SketchUp and Lumion to visualize potential in different sites or different policy recommendations and tell the story to make it approachable, make these big long-term land use decisions approachable to the public and get their feedback on things. Parks and open space is going to be a key part of the comp plan and downtown plan, building on some system level open space planning and using that to update our current thinking and inform future investments will be really important as you move forward thinking about future parks. This quality of life infrastructure will be a difference maker in communities, and parks and open space investments now will pay dividends in the long term. We'll look at level of service and future needs, understand key connections that can improve that. And also we're very skilled, Stewart and land design, conceptual design, implementation steps related to parks and open space greenways planning. And we feel like that's going to be a big part of this effort. From a land use perspective, there's some areas that need a little bit more attention, and the entertainment district is certainly one of them. And I'll let Richard talk a little bit about how that fits into the bigger puzzle.
Yeah, so again, my role on the team as a landscape architect and urban design professional that works a lot in the public realm, but also with the private sector, is to understand how we can merge the policy objectives and push each other to leverage the investments that each other's make. So from the ENT district of understanding how it complements downtown and how we perceive the impact of transit, potential transit or potential infrastructure to push the ability to get a greater diversity of uses and densities in that district, I think is going to be part of the exercises that we go. That's the culmination of everything that Jake's talked about as far as an opportunity, and Matthews, and let's continue to shape that as we move forward with the planning. And then we have from case studies and sort of parallels and our experience in not only working from a district planning or a town planning side to the implementation. I think that's, again, what part of our team brings. We not only do the analytics, but we really are on the ground building these places, and we understand what each of the other constituents needs out of this. What one investment of a city of millions of dollars yields in private investment, and we have a good gauge of how the response might be to some of the moves that we make in your planning and policy. Kannapolis, if you haven't been, that is a tremendous, I would think that we would go on a tour to that and really walk that and talk to the folks up there. They've done a phenomenal job.
Housing, again, is something that we'll look at in detail, complement the housing needs assessment underway. You all have a history of single family subdivisions, but more diversity is needed. So how do we integrate townhomes, missing middle, also where to put the bigger stuff? And there's some opportunities there with kind of retrofitting suburban corridors. And again, housing should be transit supportive, not transit dependent. Retail and commercial opportunities. There's a lot. You all are a retail center for the region, and looking at future prospects, opportunities, mixed use infill, entertainment district, and that suburban retrofit will be critical. And what role does a town play? Is it simply administering a code? Is there something more? Is there removal of barriers, incentives, things that you can do to clear the way for things that you want where you want them? And then also looking even further, is there a public role to facilitate the type of development that you want in terms of catalyst projects? And Land Design has a lot of experience with this, but is it public spaces? Is it streetscape or gateway? Is it town-owned land? Is it parks and open space? Is it these other things that could be catalytic to the type of things that you really want to see? And speaking of that, Hickory is a good example.
Yeah, Hickory is a great example. We started off working on Hickory as a large town-wide plan, looking at all of the public open spaces, the public investments, and how they could be used to spur private development. So this is what you're seeing is many years in the works, but now they've invested over 500 million in private development from the public investment. What was really important was connectivity, right? I think you guys all you've done a lot of work on connectivity in terms of planning. So this was a key component of Hickory, was how do you connect your university, your CPCC, for them it's Lenore-Rhine. How do you make sure that's connected to your downtown where you want your heart to be? And how do you connect that out to your other assets, which might be the entertainment district, but for them it was a river. And so looking at the Greenway, the Greenway connections, it's really important to think about those as being high quality experiences. So putting a multi-use path next to a road, you need to make sure that when you spend any of that money, that it's a high quality experience that you're getting, that it's comfortable for all users. So that's really critical. If you're going to make the investment, make it right. So Hickory is a great example. The downtown is seeing a lot of revitalization and a lot of outdoor dining. These are just some quick sketches as we move from the big plan. How do we think about how does the retail respond to public open space? Because, we think about retail very differently now than we did 10 years ago, right? It's about people coming together and having experiences together and also going and doing shopping, but doing it in a much more communal experience. And this is just a block down from the Union Square. On the bottom right is a picture of private development. So that's a mixed use development that is just finished construction, which was brought upon by the investment in the public infrastructure of the trails and the downtown square.
So I know y'all are going to be shocked to hear me say this, but y'all have a lot of traffic in Matthews. So I looked at the traffic volumes of John Street and Trade Street, and the volumes are as high as what we see on our North Carolina highways. It is a lot of traffic, but y'all know this. As y'all been planning this a long time, we've talked a lot that y'all have had a lot of planning documents. You've really looked at your downtown area. We've got a lot that's going to be changing. The Silver Line, you're going to have 4 stations with 1 downtown. That's going to change the transportation needs. I mean, Jake talked about that y'all are at a pivot point. You're at a pivot point for transportation as well. Independence Boulevard, changing those to managed lanes. There's going to be a lot that's happening. And there's a lot that's happening now. I mean, NCDOT has a lot of improvement projects that are going to be under construction here in these next few years. But there's also a lot of projects that are in need. There's a lot of projects that have been pushed out within the STIP. There's some uncertainty of where those prioritizations are going to be. The town has identified there's connectivity that's needed for our motor vehicles, but also for the bikes and peds. Beth talked about that we need these high quality bike ped connections. So one of the things that we're really going to do is look, there's so many planning efforts that have already taken place. We also have the TOD study for the Silver Line. And so what we're really going to do is really look at all that, evaluate it, what are the needs now, and really consolidate all this. And this is where our team of engineers, so between Land Design and Stewart, we've got a team of engineers that are going to partner with our planners, and we're going to help really look at these feasible options and really think about our priorities. And then we've talked a lot about the vision. So we're going to establish this vision. You know, we don't want to lose the small charm of Matthews. And so this is also an aspect that we're going to think about in our transportation projects. You know, our roadways don't necessarily have to be only streets for cars now. We're really designing them for places where people want to be. So these are all things that we're going to think about with both the comp plan and the downtown master plan. Oh, sorry.
And you can't see it, but water and sewer and parking too. It's not just,
Yes,
you know,
that's right.
it's not just how we move cars, you know, through and to Matthews, but it's where we put them, right? We don't want our neighborhoods just to be, you know, full of cars. That's all you see, right? Like, so that's almost as important as what the buildings look like, right? Because that creates place. So that'll be important.
So hopefully one of you will have a question about that slide. We're going to keep
Yeah.
going.
You want to talk about Silver Line?
Yeah, I mean, again, just, you know, we already mentioned Silver Line. Again, one of the things, oh, God, sorry. Yes, sorry. That first and last mile. And what that really means is that within a mile of those stations, we need to make sure we can get people there, that they can walk there, that they could bike there, they could scooter there. So we saw that Matthews has just started a pilot project with electric scooters. And so again, we just really need to make sure we're thinking about all of the different modes of transportation, the connectivity that we've really talked about, and how we really can get people to the places they need to be. One of the things that what came up in the TOD study also for the Silver Line was a possibility of a mobility hub in Matthews. So these are just all really things that really transit is going to be such a big aspect of what happens here in Matthews. So
I love that quote. Transit doesn't make bad places good, but it can make good places better. And that's what you all are at. So that's something to leverage. And Land Design has a lot of experience with similar facilities.
Yeah, just briefly, we've worked on all sides of this. We've helped with the station planning for many of the corridors with Charlotte, and we've also been involved in public infrastructure, building the system on the teams and a lot of the TODs and private development. So I think we see that potential and how we manage that in your plan.
And we'll only have a few more slides, only a few more minutes in our 30 minutes. But fundamentally, planning is about people. That's who we're planning for. It's not, you know, buildings and cars and roads are important, but engagement is really important part of this plan. You don't do this very often. And the way that we see this effort, it's really an opportunity to have a community conversation. And you don't really get an opportunity to talk to, you know, like involve 10% of the town, you know. So can we involve, you know, 1,200 households in this process in order to understand what their priorities are, what their kind of concerns are, and what the town's role is to address those moving forward. What role can private development do? So this is a citizen-driven process. We pride ourselves on a data-driven plan. It's not just about us doing analysis. It's really about meaningful input and taking the data points that we get and the feedback from people and incorporating them into the plan. And there's a lot of emphasis on our public engagement process on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Stewart is a historically underutilized business, and Willie Stewart, our founder, is from Columbia, and he thinks equity is a really important part that you know is an important cornerstone of what we do internally in Stewart and externally. And looking at traditional and non-traditional opportunities to engage people will be important, and really building the momentum for the project in a variety of ways.
And one of the key things about that, though, is that we're making sure we're engaging the stakeholders and the community with meaningful questions, right? We want to make sure we're asking them things that can really influence the plan. So we tailor our community engagement to ensure that we're using people's time very wisely. So just to wrap up, it's really important that when we are planning and coming up with policies, that we're doing something that's implementable. And we are a team that not only does the policy side, but also the design side and get things built. This is an example in downtown Salisbury. Again, looking at a public open space, but how can it feed the downtown? How can it be true to the character of the downtown while meeting the needs of community today? Parks are very important in how we use them and how they've changed and how we've experienced economic growth around their edges. This is a privately funded public open space. And again, we want to make sure that the community vision is part of the design that gets built.
And one of the things that I'll just point out here is one of the benefits of our team, and I'm really excited about working with Land Design on this, is we have a really deep bench with a lot of expertise. We're not a one-person firm. We have teams of planners and engineers and landscape architects to leverage as things come up. So there could be a need for looking more at your ordinances and providing some more detailed recommendations. We do land development codes and zoning ordinances, UDOs, that sort of thing. We have people that specialize in that. Budgeting, if we need cost estimates, if we need more detailed work on the transportation side, we have those folks on the active transportation side and, roadway and, public transportation. So that's important. Looking at these smart area plans, you need an interdisciplinary approach. And both our firms kind of pride ourselves on interdisciplinary thinking and thinking about the big picture from multiple perspectives and disciplines. I think that I'll close with that and just say that, this team has a unique approach that's worked elsewhere. And we're really excited about, the perspective of working with you all on these two things and creating plans that are uniquely Matthews. So.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Really like the emphasis on green spaces and open space because this board has gotten some negative feedback from a few people about procuring green space. And I don't think we can ever have enough of it. So I'm very much a proponent of open spaces and parks. The question I've gotten, I'm going to open it up to everybody. I'm sure everybody's got a few questions. Regarding the community engagement, one thing I've seen when you do community engagement by saying, hey, show up at town hall at such and such date to give your opinion, we seem to attract the same kind of people for every time. For instance, I think it has skewed the information in a wrong way. We had 4 or 5 families come in and all say, we want basketball courts. Matthews demands basketball courts. Well, they were a very small minority of who actually wanted. They just skewed the data.
They
data.
did it
So
100 times, right?
and so, right, they did. And we handed we handed out stickers and you could put a sticker on each thing you wanted and they put all their stickers on basketball courts. And so it looked like, hundreds or thousands of people here wanted basketball courts. So how do you ensure that you get a good cross-section of opinions when you go to do your community engagement?
So I know we can both answer this, but I'm just going to do it. So there's a variety of ways. One is that you go to the people, right? So you're going to events, you have a lot of events here, a lot of opportunities, the farmers market, to have tables there, booths there that you can engage people who would not come to those meetings. We also leverage online feedback, right? So that people who don't want to go to a meeting or don't go out in public can also feel comfortable going online and giving feedback there. Another thing to consider, which I don't know that is in but something to consider is a statistically valid survey, right? A statistically valid survey sort of can say, well, it can point out that, yes, you did hear that everyone wants to have a 500-acre park in downtown, but that was only the people who came to the park, right? So it really helps get rid of sort of the nuances of it all. But another thing that's really important to think about, yes, we want to make sure that we're getting a good cross-section. We go to unique places to get the feedback, but everyone needs to be heard and everyone wants to have a chance to say something. So we want to be able to listen to everyone, but have the tools to help you understand what is really a reflection of your community.
So you will have analytics that show the demographics of who you're contacting and where they're located in town. For instance, we've had
with a survey.
Yeah. I think that's really important. How we design the engagement process is something that is a really critical piece of this.
Absolutely.
And early on, our typical approach that we've used elsewhere is put together a public engagement plan jointly with staff. because essentially we're going to be an extension of staff, and staff knows kind of what works, what doesn't, and has probably some ideas on how to engage the broad cross section and not just the 6 people that come up and vote for basketball courts.
Right.
So that's going to be on the front end of this, and that public engagement plan will lay out events, leaving some flexibility for pivoting along the way and saying we're not hearing from this sort of people or these type of people, so we can kind of pivot a little bit, but we'll have some targets on geographic equity and other measures of equity to make sure that we're not just hearing from people who live downtown or in one neighborhood. And in Huntersville, we actually had used publicinput.com as the survey mechanism, and we were able to kind of show like a map of respondents and visually say, okay, we haven't really heard from this neighborhood, and there needs to be some additional effort to hear from them. And maybe they won't come to a meeting, but maybe they go to a church and we can go there and do something informal, or have it at a coffee shop, or when we're working in Brevard, and we just had a meeting at the brewery, to get young people to hear from them because we weren't hearing from them. So that's important, setting up a plan with defined targets in terms of geographic and other measures of equity, but leaving some flexibility to kind of respond to who we're hearing from and who we're not hearing from is really critical.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of our public engagement, when we go back and look at it, it seems to be skewed also with people that live on this side of Independence Boulevard, because the people that live over where John Urban lives don't come over here to participate sometimes in the. So I have a couple other comments and questions, but I'm going to open it up. Who else has a question? I'm sure Commissioner Urban has several. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks for the presentation. Went through your materials. So with a couple of questions I have is, obviously you're talking about leveraging of investments, et cetera, but probably by the time you get fully engaged, or whoever the winner is gets fully engaged on this, we may have made political decisions on probably the last bastions of land in town. So the only thing left would be uniquely just sort of infill boutique. So if a community is built out, how do you leverage those investments?
Well, I think there are plenty of ways to create connective tissue between the things that are emerging, and providing opportunities for both a public side of making connections and a private side to enhance those things. I think too, as we begin to assess how future transit might affect certain of these focus areas, that as that becomes more and more real, as that goes through the federal process and becomes more and more real for you, I think that investment of not only time but future dollars is going to have an exponential impact of how private side comes to your community. I do think too, as Mayor had mentioned, as far as public open space has been one of the primary and key. You've invested in sports facilities extensively. Kannapolis had invested in sports facilities extensively, but those rich variety of those spaces, and how we continue to make those improvements and have those integrated with development, and begin to shape that to where those are integrated rather than separate pieces, I think is critical.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep on going unless someone raises their hand. So obviously the Silver Line, although somewhat delayed, will be coming through town. We worked on the alignment. We have a great deal of citizenry very upset by this. Give me the pros and cons of how you see the Silver Line affecting the town of Matthews.
Yeah, so again, it's not a quaint streetcar, right? It's a light rail system, and I often say I'd rather be beside it than having it run through me, right? And so you have moments where it does kind of come pretty close to pretty tight fabric, and it's attention to detail. It's attention. What CATS does is go through an exercise of urban design framework, and that is our degrees of sensitivities that the system would have at any given point along the line. So as it gets closer to a centerpiece of your historic downtown or the centerpiece of ENT, that those sensitivities go up. and how they manage dimensionally, how they manage traction power systems and where those go, how they manage landscape and sort of aesthetic things. All of that dials up, and I think it's important for us collectively that are seeing that realized is to make sure that CATS is focused on those things. I think the community will definitely benefit from an access and mobility standpoint. And A, we got to make sure it gets in the right spot. And B, we need to make sure that we're mitigating those negatives with the urban design framework that they come up with.
And it will help take some of the cars off the roads. It'll help some.
Mr. Garner?
I think I'd like to continue on that Silver Line train of thought a little bit. Bad pun, sorry.
Did you? She did.
You talk about the fabric or creating the sort of connectivity between spaces, right? And I have a concern when the Silver Line comes through and we focus on the financial sort of excitement of the ENT district and what that can bring. Both of those can do some really disruptive and damaging things to Crestdale. And so using the term sensitivity, I'm thinking of it in a different way, right? And how, and I'm maybe picking on you a little bit because I saw in your resume Camp North End and Eastland Mall. It may be coming from the direction of the towns and the cities who are coming up with these plans for focal points, knowing people who don't benefit from the uplift of an area.
Sure.
Are displaced by that. I want to make sure that doesn't happen in Crestdale. How do you approach that in this comprehensive plan? Because it's a vulnerable community, and there's a lot of, not just in Crestdale, but in Matthews in general, I would say there's some distrust of things that the government wants to do, right? And so first you have to build that trust. How are you going to do that? And then how do you make sure that you are being careful, not gentrifying an area and forcing people out who have lived there for generations?
So Beth or Richard might talk about kind of the design aspect of how to deal with that. But I think that there's another level of approach to that through policy to programmatic approach to potential impacts of some type of investment like that. And especially when you have an area that hasn't seen a lot of investment, and then you have this huge public investment that comes in, and it can be really beneficial because it can increase access to jobs and employment and increase property values and that sort of thing. But if you're a renter, what's the impact there? That can have a negative impact. And I really like what Mitch Silver has said about investing in parks and that sort of thing. And should we not invest in parks if it's going to raise property values and could result in some gentrification? The answer to that is no. We should invest in parks because people deserve to have nice parks. But there's a whole suite of things that the town can do along with your partners that try to mitigate the negative impacts of that investment, specifically on the housing side, on the housing supportive side, from supporting owners and really adjusting affordable and workforce approach to affordable workforce housing and policy in order to kind of counterbalance some potential negative impacts. So it's really on the programmatic side and policy level that I see that there's a lot of opportunity. And the time is now. The time is, yesterday to put those programs in place or start talking about them in order to get out in front of, potential increases in property value that could result in some of those things that you talked about. Because while we might be happy about that from a fiscal standpoint, we do need to make sure that is a big part of our approach in order to parry some of those potential negative impacts locally.
To follow up with that, I understand that it is a policy and programmatic approach to it, but as these documents are created, we aren't going to be the board some of us will be using it in the future, some of us will not be. And when documents are created, they sometimes become an unspoken law, right? And so how is that incorporated into this plan? I understand that, it's not on you, but it does need to be approached in a way that's sensitive in the comprehensive plan so that future boards sort of understand that underlying sensitivity.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we can, put some policies in place, talk about, potential programmatic changes. I think, affordability, toolkit of sorts, recommendations that are easy, low hanging fruit that you definitely should do, but then also meet with you all at other partners to understand what other roles the town can and should be playing in order to mitigate some of those things and put those in place, or at least set them in motion. You all will, this plan is not going to stand up programs automatically. It's going to set a framework for dealing with that issue. And it might have some options for you to talk about further and investment strategy, different ways to and kind of put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. But it's not going to change the budget next year, right? But it will outline an issue and outline some priorities from a staffing or programmatic perspective that can really lay the groundwork for what happens over the next year or two or even longer. So that's what we try to do.
We'll make sure Commissioner Whitley or Tefano, do either of you have a question or a comment?
No, I don't have anything there. I think Renee addressed what I was concerned, especially about coming down through the lower part of Crestdale over by the Public Works Department coming through there. But I thank you for the presentation too, as well too.
And none for me. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem McCool.
First, I want to thank you for a great presentation. My question is, as an elected official, I've seen this as Matthews grows. We're seeing, for the longest time, you see people, young folks moving to Center City, Charlotte. Now you're seeing them come back. And so how do you mitigate the folks who have lived here for 40 years versus the folks who are now moving from center cities to suburbs? There's different wants and needs between those two groups, and we sometimes see that come to a head. So how do you mitigate that when you're doing this plan?
Well, I mean, first we need to, make sure we're hearing from everybody. That's goes back to that public engagement plan and how we do our public engagement. Typically older folks are more engaged, right? So, I wouldn't be surprised, after the first survey, that our average age of respondent was, north of 50, 55, 60, 58, something like that. I mean, that's not unheard of. So, we kind of need to make a special effort to involve young people too, especially young families. They're really hard. I mean, I guess I've fallen into that category, although I'm getting older every day. But it's hard, I have a 2 and 8-year-old, but it's hard to, make time to participate. But, hearing from a broad spectrum and making sure that we're planning for everybody, not just, older folks, but young families and really even younger than that. I think that we need to hear from high schoolers. Because they're the ones that are going to be moving to Center City in a few years and then wanting to come back, or if we do things right, they're going to want to come back. But hearing from those folks, making sure we hear from longtime residents in established neighborhoods, that goes back to Crestdale and others. I think there's a real opportunity that we didn't say earlier, but design is such a powerful tool to make sure that the needs of neighborhoods are come to fruition, right? So when it comes to stationary planning, when it comes to building out the system of parks and greenways, or creating these gathering spaces or key redevelopment areas, we care about what that neighborhood wants. And I think your staff is kind of a bridge for CATS to allow that to happen. And I think this effort can contribute to that. And can, our staff can augment that effort to where, it can kind of inform what happens in these later phases of design and Silver Line and what happens after. And that's our hope.
Thank
I'll
you.
just add to that I think it's also important when you start with public engagement that you're sharing information, right? So that people are understanding the consequences. So if you're asking a question, it's a meaningful question that they can actually they give us input on is something that we can act on. But they're also doing it based on real information about trade-offs. So if you want your town to prosper over the next 40 years, these are some of the things that you might need to consider. And these are some of the things that different demographic or different age groups also care about. And so making sure that that's shared so that we're all working from the same information. And we do that in a way that is very easy to understand and very graphic, heavy, and so that you can visualize these different types of information that we're sharing. So
I mean, if I was doing a large scale master plan for 300 acres for a private developer, and we had to define market differentiation within that 300 acres, I'd start using adjectives. I mean, you'd start with what are the differentiating propositions for each one and the attitudes of the place, or who are you trying to attract? And a lot of that kind of background experience on district plans and area plans can begin to call out of the plan the uniqueness of each place to ensure that we're hitting all of these target markets. Rather than it's just be land uses and densities and numbers and form, it's really about what's the essence of each of those places.
Nearing the end of our time, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask a question if they have one. Commissioner Hoover, do you have anything? Okay.
So you now have it, right? So you will share it.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate it.
So obviously, this has been a highly competitive process, and you are amongst the finalists. So I guess the question I have is, why should we choose you? What is your secret sauce that makes you better than your competitors?
Go ahead.
Well, I really think that I hope that you see in the work that there is in our portfolio, and also what we've talked to you about, is that we are dedicated to building communities that are high quality and will last into the future. A place that you can be proud to live, a place you can be proud to work, a place you want to stay. And I think that our team together, we have a group of folks behind us with a lot of different types of expertise that can handle anything with this comp plan and the downtown master plan.
Just as a follow-up to that, you piqued my interest. How do you make sure that your plan is more or less timeless and it doesn't become the avocado refrigerator? Favorite saying.
Well, the avocado in the refrigerator. Things change, right? Our community preferences change, society changes, and so you're always going to be evolving. What we're doing is that we have a very good ear or a very good sense of what's going on in terms of trends of how people experience places, and then how communities can come together to get things built and developed and funded. And so we use that information based on all the projects that we are building and all the communities that we have built that are lasting. If you take a look at some of the projects we've done, you'll see that they are very lasting. So we use that expertise and also understand that things do change, right? And in every place, you do want it to evolve with your community.
That's a good answer. And, I think that the goal is for this plan to guide you for the next 5 to 7 years. Well, and hopefully at the end of that, if we're successful, then you've accomplished a lot of things that are in here, because it's not going to be necessarily just big ideas and vision statements, right? I mean, we want to have a pragmatic approach to how to implement these things. So it likely will need to be updated in 5 to 7 years, but hopefully the framework that is in place is working well enough to where it would be more of a minor update than this effort would likely be. And it's more about, okay, these things change, we've accomplished these things, and this is what's next. And let's still have a community conversation in order to find out, okay, what's next from that.
So one last thing though to leave you with is that to make sure that things are lasting, do not sacrifice quality. Do not sacrifice quality of experience. It's so important. So your vision is based on that. And so when you're questioning what should I prioritize? Can I get this funding from Instant DOT and get a road built? Is it meeting the vision of what your community has said? And if it hasn't, I would think about what you really should prioritize.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that's most exciting is really in the pictures you've shown of previous comp plans you put together are the areas that encourage communities to come together. I'm especially concerned about that when I see so many young people, glued to their phones and not having any human interaction. So having spaces that people can meet and actually talk to one another, I think is going to be important going forward. Does anybody have any other questions, comments? Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
presentation.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Thanks so much.
It's really good to meet you. I've heard your name a lot. Thank you so much. Yes.
You want to start us off again, sir? Again?
Yeah, so this is firm two, led by Cole Jeanette Stone, Bolton Mink, and I'm gonna turn it over to John Cock, who's going to do introductions of their entire team. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Thank you.
Great.
Mayor, Council, pleasure to be with you all tonight, and I am going to push this button and the president. Great, there's the presentation. Well, thanks for having us. I'm John Cock. I lead our Transportation Services Group here in Charlotte, and I'm standing in this evening for Grant Miachi, who is our project manager, who is on live from Wilmington, but he's been sick this week, and so we thought it best for him not to be here in person. So I'm going to introduce our team, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lorna Allen, who's our deputy project manager. And so if I push this button, so Lorna Allen, landscape architect, will be our deputy project manager. And Lorna is a person with a great deal of experience in community placemaking in the public realm, both in the public and private sectors, who's been working in Matthews on the Silver Line since at least 2016, when the Silver Line study first began, and more recently on the TOD study here and on the 335 East Matthews project. So people you've seen before, we have put together this team based on people who you all know, who know Matthews, and who have worked together successfully before. Christine Edwards is another one of our longtime collaborators who has worked with City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, including on the Center City downtown plan for City of Charlotte and on Charlotte's Vision Zero plan, and on the Mecklenburg County voter preference program for taxes. I am John Cock. I'll be leading the transportation element, and had the good fortune to work with you all on the downtown mobility plan, the Silver Line Rail Trail, and am currently working on site plan development for the Silver Line stations. We've got 3 people online, and this is not advancing. So are we going to have to do that manually? Okay. So Grant Miachi is our project manager. He's online and will be leading the downtown portion of the plan. Grant is also a landscape architect, has worked on center city plans from big cities like Raleigh and Charlotte, but also on small communities like West Pelzer, South Carolina, where Grant and Lorna are currently working. Matt Noonkester, who you all also know from recent work here in Matthews, has led comprehensive plans all over the country and teamed with Meg Nealon, probably one of the most accomplished comprehensive planning teams in the Southeast, certainly in this state. So we are very proud to have worked with them. Meg led the East Matthews Gateway Area Study. And one of the fun facts about Meg, Meg is one of the common factors between the planning work of both of the teams that you're talking to tonight. Worked on many, many plans. We're very happy that she is on as part of our team. She's not online, but is a active member of our team. Jen Gregory, president for Retail Strategies, brings sort of a national perspective on working with downtowns to position their commercial areas and their economic development strategies. And so we really wanted to bring this flavor of a team that knows Matthews, that has worked with you before, but also brings an outside perspective that will add value to what you all are looking to do. Now I'm going to turn it over to Lorna to talk more about our process and our team. So I'll keep this.
Let John have the clicker. So you're probably thinking, whoa, big team, right? Well, that's very intentional. We really wanted to put together the best for you and bring together people who really understand Matthews from the comprehensive big picture level to understanding your opportunities and where they lie within your economic and development strategy. And also when you start thinking about your downtown plan, how important that is for the identity, the character, that small town charm that we have here in Matthews and we want to keep. So with that said, apologies for how light those lines may appear on the screen, but we all have a hand in all components of this, but some of us lead pieces of it. And we have worked together seamlessly before. Christine and I go back a ways. So I just want to say that like, this is a really rock star team that I'm very, very proud to be a part of. And we're going to come to you with our approach that we really focus within the community. We call it community-centered design. And really what that means is we have kind of a 4-step process that we really make sure that we're being accountable and strategic. You know, Jen with retail strategies, she's going to start that context setting for us. So we're going to dig into the data and the demographics with her. Christine's going to help us define the process as a community engagement specialist, because she's going to help us understand who we need to be working with within the community, strategic stakeholders, maybe communities that have not been engaged with historically. Also, we are going to use that and bring that into our planning and our design work, and we will be tracking ourselves to make sure that we're held accountable and making sure that we're hitting the marks that you all feel are important to hit throughout this process. So John mentioned we have some local expertise. There's just some dots on the map right now, but just to kind of run you through a few of those, we are currently working on the CPCC facilities master plan update. I have actually set foot on every single CPCC campus this year. And they're beautiful and what a great asset for the community. We have also done some planning studies within the community, Meg's Eastern Gateway Plan, and then the downtown mobility and parking plan that John worked on. So just to name a few, and then if you look at that laundry list of CATS, Lynx, Silverline, I don't want to share my age, but I have been involved with that project for quite some time. And I'm very proud of where it's at today. And I want to help Matthews continue forward planning TOD in this community and thinking about how it is strategic and intentional with how you all grow. And then just to kind of give you a rough idea, combined as a team, we have had over 115 comprehensive and downtown plans completed. So not a small feat. We feel we really know Matthews. We have, I must commend you all on your 2023-2028 strategic plan and all of the engagement that you have already done to set up the pillars of what will be a great comprehensive plan for your community with those 12 vision themes around mobility, small town charm, and others. And so we want to build on that and we want to accelerate that and keep your community engaged, keep those vision themes at the forefront, and also thinking through how we prioritize the character and charm of this community, because we've heard this from you all countless times, and we believe that this is a really important part of how we move forward with this project. So we heard you. We understand the key topic areas that you all have shown in other plans, have worked with other consultants, have done yourselves internally, and we will tailor our approach to making sure that we're addressing the market and economic development strategy, making sure that it is grounded in reality, that it's realistic and has the data to back it, focusing in on how those retail centers, how those pivot and change over time. We know that the retail landscape is changing. One thing that's great about our firm is we have a lot of built projects and we've been doing it for a very long time. So we understand implementation. And with Grant Miyachi at the helm, as a former assistant city planning director for the city of Charlotte, he really understands those long-term plans and bringing them together to actually getting them implemented. And then I've mentioned the Lynx Silverline, and we're really excited that you all included Stumptown Park as such an important key component of your downtown. And then the zoning of how we actually get things done and built to the standards that we desire. So this may be a little different than maybe the other team approached it, but we're kind of coming at it 3 ways here. Community input led by Christine. We really want to make sure that we have these stakeholders bought in, because if people don't believe this is their plan, it's not going to move forward. We're going to support that with data and analysis, making sure that we're bringing to you any new trends, best practices, so we understand the infrastructure and the economy and how we can tie that into our planning process. And then you have all of our experience at your disposal. So we will bring to you our best practices so we can work with you. So I'll pass this over to Christine now.
Thank you, Lorna. Good evening. I'm Christine Edwards. I'm very excited to be here, thrilled to be a part of this team. So I'll just jump right in. We want to be able to show you all that we want to go above and beyond in terms of engaging the community. You know, community engagement is something that I love to do. I have a deep history of engaging the community. And we know that understanding the demographics of an area is one of the first parts of engaging the community. So we have a graphic here that shows you the racial makeup of Matthews. And you guys already know that, right? But we know that race is just one key demographic in terms of creating that audience engagement and really engaging key stakeholders. There are other demographics and other key indicators that we would look at. For example, income and things of that nature, and also geographic locations. But what we want to really show is that we want to go above and beyond to create robust community engagement, to make sure that our engagement is not only representative, but also reaching communities that may not have been heard in the past. So I want to tell you all a little bit about what we can offer in terms of public engagement tailored for the community of Matthews. There are a variety of engagement activities, including but not limited to what you see here: roundtable discussions, pop-up meetings, and community events that are planned in partnership with the town of Matthews, in partnership with local organizations and neighborhoods as well. Creating meetings in a box so that community members can take the tools and resources that we've created and host conversations on their own. Also, making sure that we have that online engagement and that online presence so that we're working with you all to develop those key messages for this plan. On a previous slide, you saw that my role would touch both the downtown plan and the comprehensive plan. So we want to make sure that it's really a through line throughout this process. Public engagement truly is the foundation. Steering committee workshops. If you could go back really quickly. Oh, thank you. So steering committee workshops, online community survey, making sure that we're collaborating with diverse multilingual audiences, and we're also engaging people at the neighborhood level. So next slide, please. Okay, so just to wrap it up, we wanted to really show how we could have a variety of engagement activities that were both virtual and in person, synchronous and asynchronous, so that folks could engage in a lot of different ways. I do have a deep experience, previously worked with the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County in my career prior to starting my firm. Within my firm, I've worked with large urban communities like the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, but I also have experience in mid-sized communities like Asheville and the town of Chapel Hill. And as I said, community engagement is something that I love to do. And I really want to be able to show how this team is going to be able to translate this planning process into something that the community is going to love being a part of. All right, thank you. I'm going to hand it back over to the team.
Good evening. I'm Jen Gregory, and I will be managing the market and retail analysis component if we are so fortunate enough to work with you. And so talking through that, I think it's very evident that post-COVID, we're starting to see a lot of changes in consumer behavior, how people do business, how they shop, where they work, where they live in relation to their work, and also what that real estate, that commercial real estate looks like now and potentially in the future. And so our approach when conducting the market research is not just running static demographics. You have access to that information likely already, but instead we will use layers of data, research, and GIS to first create a custom trade area. We want to understand what that trade area is, how large it is, and are there potential variances in that trade area? And so many times city leaders will just consider their municipal boundaries when they're thinking about their community, their demographics, but often, almost always, we see that those lines are blurred, and many times we see those areas become much larger. Similarly, we know that the downtown has a bit of a different trade area than your traditional commercial corridors. We know that downtown is more of a destination, and we want to continue to position it as such. And so through our market analysis, we will use these different layers to determine that customized trade area, both in a primary factor, your everyday shopper and consumer, and also in a secondary, sort of like you see on the screen as an example. Then we dive into those areas and understand the consumer behavior patterns of those folks. Also, we know that COVID has accelerated a lot of changes in the retail landscape, and we commend the town of Matthews for acknowledging that and including that in part of your RFP. Our firm is a national expert in retail and real estate for municipalities and communities. And so we will look at your existing real estate on your commercial corridors, those big box locations, maybe any vacant land as well, and note what those retail trends are. We know that online shopping is increasing. We know that many big box locations are now making their store merchandising area much smaller and reserving some of the back of house space for order fulfillment. We're seeing a mix of uses in commercial properties, not necessarily residential, but a mix of uses such as retail and healthcare, mixed with office space all in one. So really focusing on your retail centers, identifying those trends, and then reimagining what will those spaces look like 5, 10, 20 years in the future. Similarly, we want to take all of that high level information and then start to drill down, what does that mean for Matthews, and how can that inform the plan? How can that inform land use, your downtown specific strategy? So we will take this information. Here on the screen is actually Matthews's commute patterns report, where we see that within a 3-mile radius of the town of Matthews, that there are 317,000 people that are of working age. You can see that by drawing out from just your municipal boundaries, you start to see this very large area. And then we see how these people are getting to work, where they're going, are they walking, carpooling, and the like, how long are they in the car? And this can help inform many parts of the plan, but we'll also look at, in addition to commute patterns, tourism insights. We'll look at some of your tourism hotspots and see where are those visitors coming from. Retail leakage, of course, so that we can identify what are those uses that are missing that could realistically be supported, that help further the vision of Matthews selectively. And then also look at what we call our peer market analysis, where we identify other communities that are like yours based on the trade area demographics, and start identifying what they have that you might not, that may be desirable for your community. And I'm going to hand it off to my teammate now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Again, my name is Matt Noonkester, and I'll be working with Meg Nealon to lead the comprehensive plan component of the larger project. And as part of that, we want to build on our experience, obviously working within Matthews and the surrounding area. And we've produced some information for you. We've actually already presented to you in past projects. And so we hope that you find us enjoyable to work with and easy to work with. I think if you ask your staff, we play well with others. And so we plan to do the same here. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that as we approach the comprehensive plan specifically, it provides the broad framework for which the town would want to plan its conservation, development, and growth strategies going into the future. Unlike some other plans, we try to focus on character We have a big belief that if we get the character of Matthews right, that everything else can fall into place, like decisions about land use or density or infrastructure and the like. If we know where the bullseye is, it's easy to hit the target. So we really want to spend a lot of time on the character. It also transfers very nicely between our work and the downtown plan, as well as other activity center plans we might be doing. We also have a lot of experience doing this, and you see kind of the list on the bottom, whether it's Wendell, Holly Springs, Fuquay Varina, Knightdale, or Harrisburg, just highlighting some of our North Carolina experience. Those places were small towns growing at the edge of a metropolitan area, also at the end of a transit line in many cases, high housing demand, and a real resurgence and emphasis on their downtown. The only last thing I'll say to this as well is I just want you to know that while we're focusing for this evening on the downtown plan and the comprehensive plan, as part of the comprehensive plan process, if you look at some of our previous work, you'll see that we identify multiple activity centers within the community, and we will do some lot, block, and building type drawing to make sure we get it right for those areas as well, whether it's the sportsplex or the hospital area or 74 and the like. And so we try to spread our emphasis on character throughout the community. And so to that end, as we have worked in your part of the world before, and these are some of the things that at least have come up before with us as we've worked with you, and we think they're things to start to set the targets for this planning process, at least at the comprehensive plan level. Things like multifamily development, we know there's no shortage of demand for that and interest and applications coming your way. So how much of it do we approve and where do we approve it? There's a limited amount of land left to develop within Matthews. And so do you want to develop it to be more suburban, more urban, something in between, a diverse strategy? To that end, how do you make sure that you get everything exactly right when you have such limited land left and there's competition for space? And then how do you communicate those expectations to the development community so you get the intended outcomes that you're striving for? And that's where it starts with these plans. Things like the silver line, how do you make it an asset and not something you're trying to work around or work against? If you do infill development or redevelopment, it's some of the hardest topics to talk about in a community because it usually requires change adjacent to where there's already development. So how do we go through that process? And then things like what type of densities do you go for? Do you even stop talking about density as a number and instead talk about design? Things like surface parking and when do you go to parking decks is a huge watershed moment for a community. And then again, in that limited land area, what is the highest and best use that we want for these spaces? And do we need to have patience to make sure you get the right thing? The other thing that I really like about this team is how we can turn the dial. As Lorna and John had mentioned in the opening, a lot of our experiences as individual project team members go back and forth at different scales, whether it's the comprehensive plan, the downtown plan, or even a unified development ordinance. And so we have the ability to understand and contribute at all of those different levels, which means you get a seamless project without holes or dangling wires. And so as we turn the dials, you see here in this picture where the comprehensive plan might be more like the tulip fields from the high level. We look at how things are organized, how they match up with each other. The colors on the map give some intended outcomes. When you get to the downtown plan, we've zoomed in to another level of detail and allowed to make certain recommendations. And then even some of the recommendations we make for the Unified Development Ordinance or other things in order to reach implementation, get into even more detail. And we have a team who can do that. The other thing that we like to recognize in the planning process is that as a government, you only control so much of what happens on the land. And so how do you strategically place yourself to get intended outcomes again? So what type of market demand are you trying to attract to the community is very important. What are the property owners thinking? Do they want to develop? Do they want to conserve? How do you partner with them? Do you have the right type of developers work in your community to get what you want? Or do we have to find others and make sure other people know about what Matthews wants to achieve? And then the lending community, can it be funded? So we recognize where you as a local government fit within this process and try to maximize your impacts. And then finally, again, we like to make sure that there's a smooth transition between plans and plan documents. This is actually a page out of the Fuquay Varina land use plan that we have just completed. And you can see there that we had different types of character and character areas that were intended in our comprehensive plan. And here we had a matrix, so there were no questions about which zoning districts implemented those characters. We could also talk about how we connect to the downtown plan as well. But we make sure that there's no questions or stones unturned, that the documents work very well together as we go through the process.
Awesome. So we did want to touch on the historic downtown Matthews and the downtown plan component. And one of the things that we have seen be very successful in a lot of communities that we have worked in is how downtown development actually occurs. And we look at it from kind of a three-legged approach. We have that public investment. That is what you all are doing today with your planning efforts, the infrastructure, and all of the other great things that you're doing in your downtown. And then that private investment that Matt was just kind of referring to, that is the hand in the developers that are, and then what is the funding priority? So how does that all come together within a downtown development? Well, we want to make this easy for you. We want to make sure that there is predictable zoning so that you don't have developers coming to you being like, well, that's not what I thought it said. And thinking through how to make it clearer and more succinct so that that process moves smoothly for you all. We want to make sure that we're investing in this vibrant small business ecosystem that you have today. We want to see it thrive and flourish for years to come. That's why we're working with Retail Strategies, and that's why they're on our team. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the character and the charm within this downtown. So thinking through, what does right-sized infill look like? So as Matt was saying, with the character types for these different parts of your community, making sure that we're getting it right in the front end as we move through the planning process. And then preserving that character as we move throughout it and really crafting a wonderful public realm that people love to be in, that are proud of, that is beloved. So like I said, we've been here with you all before. We've gotten a taste of working through some different scenarios with you for 335 East Matthews, looking through different densities as it would relate to TOD with the adjacency of this parcel to the Silver Line, and then coming up with a solution for the near term for you all to kind of think through as that property matures and once the Silver Line comes. Also, being the landscape architect, I'm very excited about this component of the plan and the opportunity for placemaking with the park and the different and just diverse layers and spaces that we can craft and pull together, and tying in those activated edges, which really, really makes the heart of your community right here in the downtown. So, I mean, these are just, I want to say that we can walk the walk. These are images of our built projects that are in downtown communities that are thriving and beloved and buzzing with people and activity. So I'm going to wrap us up here because we've been talking too long. But I just want to let y'all know we are built for this project. We pull these partners together because we truly believe in the work that they do, the quality that they deliver, and they're just really great people to work with. We feel we really know Matthews. We've had a wonderful time working with your staff on past projects, and we're back for more. We want more. As John said it best, we feel we are partnering with Meg and Matt as the best comprehensive planning team in North Carolina, and we're so honored that they said yes to joining our team. We have a ton of experience with downtown development and placemaking. Myself personally, having worked for the Urban Design Center for the City of Charlotte, building a placemaking program for them. Public-private policy and project expertise. We have written ordinances. We understand how to get projects implemented and built. I'm still very good friends with our buddies over at CATS, as is John and the rest of our team. We work really well with NCDOT, and we have a ton of TOD experience. A lot of our clients are building TOD projects throughout the Mecklenburg area. We're right in Charlotte. This is a group of us just downtown and uptown. We built a parklet. We're a fun group. But one of the other things I did want to point out is that within our greater family of our company, we have been very successful in getting projects funded and finding funding for projects. And we collectively have over 1 billion that we have. That's right, I said billion, that we have been able to be successful for our clients. So with that, I welcome you all to ask us questions. But again, thank you for having us here. We really do love your town, and we want lots of reasons to come back and visit and explore and spend money. So thank you.
Thank you for that great presentation. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of your firm, how it started and how long you've been in business?
So Colganess and Stone started in North Carolina over 30 years ago. In 2021, merged with Bolton and Mink, which is a municipal focused engineering firm that was founded in the Minneapolis metro and has recently opened. Well, we are now 5 offices in the Carolinas. So merger with Colganess and Stone and a nice complementary bit of experience between municipal focused services and public and private land planning and landscape architecture, civil engineering.
Great, thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions? Commissioner Urban.
You can't hear.
Who can't hear?
I can't hear you, Whitley.
I can hear you.
Neither can I.
The question is top 3 things that are unique in Matthews. You've been here. You're the team of Matthews. What are the 3?
Yeah, we're all going to take one. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to take the easy one, which is your downtown, which is pretty awesome. But I have really, really, truly enjoyed working with the people of the town of Matthews. I've done countless engagements here through the work on Silverline, and y'all are a fun bunch. I've always had a really good time and really enjoyed getting to know the communities and the neighborhoods in this area. So I have to say your community as a whole is wonderful and a real joy to work with.
That's a fantastic question. My response is going to be the proximity and where it's situated within the county and within the region. I think that we live in an awesome, lovely, vibrant region. And I think that Matthews really takes advantage of that through its programming and facilities. And whenever you are in the town of Matthews, you really get a sense that you are close to something. You can reach out and touch something that's really vital. So proximity.
Well, I think I would say, being a resident of another Mecklenburg County town, I envy what looks like a great tax base, a very diverse tax base between you've got a hospital, you've got lots of commercial, but you've also got industrial tax base. I think most Mecklenburg County towns would be very, very envious, and towns in this region of the diversity of tax base that you all have from a jobs and an income revenue perspective. I know it's got to be challenging for you all to balance sometimes, but that would be one thing I would mention.
I'll keep running one more question then. So while you're doing these public engagement functions, how, in light of NIMBYism and the latest acronym YIMBYism, do you find that commonality, or what is your process to work through both of those dichotomies?
Sure.
So when it comes to engaging the public, especially now in 2022, it used to be hard to get people to come out and weigh in on what's going on in the community. But now we find that people are eager to have their voices heard. So that's what I'm hearing when I hear you say YIMBYisms, people saying, yes, yes, bring the opportunities for feedback. I want to get involved. So when it comes to our public engagement, that's why we want to have multiple opportunities and not just one type of feedback opportunity. Surveys, small group sessions, large group sessions, public events that people can just be a part of. That's more around brand awareness. But then when you have these smaller group sessions, it actually gives people an opportunity to share their lived experiences. So you can get in the room with someone who is very different than you, and you get an opportunity to share both of those experiences.
Matt, do you want to jump in on that question? Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. And I think it's much more comfortable question to answer now than it was even 10 or 15 years ago, at least for a comprehensive plan. And it's because Back in the day, what we would do is we would work with you all in a room, collect the data, come up with the best plan, and then we would unveil it in the public and we would defend it all the way out until adoption. And we would just kind of explain to people why we think we're right and you're wrong. Thankfully, those days are past us, which is great. One of the things that we've been very successful doing now is through our scenario planning and things like that, where we're actually looking at competing futures. And you got a little bit of a glimpse of that when we built the tools for you, the scenario planning and analysis tools. Remember when we were looking at John Street and the region's telling you to 4-lane it, and we created some tools to tell you it's okay to keep it 2 lanes. Those kind of things where we look at the different options together, you start to see people find shared interest, commonalities, places to compromise or build consensus. But I think doing the planning out in the open now has really been a benefit to the process and the product. I will tell you this, though. I think that this might be the hardest plan you've written yet. And the reason I say that is you're a community that has a tremendous amount of demand. You don't have a lot of space, so you're going to have to figure out what to do with a limited amount of supply. That creates tension. It creates angst. It gets people excited. And so this is going to be a hard plan. You know, it's not the easy plan where you just keep marching out and the people aren't there to complain yet. I do think this is going to be a hard plan. And I think between the engagement strategy, as well as some of the tools we have to show that we're honestly building this plan out in the open, will lead to success.
One of the biggest struggles we've had as a community, as elected board, is to address the need for attainable and affordable housing. Can anybody on your team address maybe what you've done in that realm for other communities?
Grant, do you want to jump in on this one?
I can try. I can try.
Sorry, if you don't have a voice, mute.
Bear with me a little bit on suffering through some COVID here, but you know, in terms of affordable housing, there's a few things that we've had good success with. One is making sure that you have a mix, and that you're always kind of you're not unduly kind of filtering that mix through zoning zoning policy or ordinance that may prohibit you building a really good mix of housing that can meet a need, right? So increasing that kind of mix, you often hear about it kind of limited in a very specific niche called kind of missing middle housing. That's only one part of it, but it's really that kind of wider range. But that also has to be coupled with incentives to development to do that. And that's really the most difficult part, because those numbers are very difficult to kind of balance out of that. And you can see just even in the work that we did in Charlotte at TOD, you know, in the newspaper just this week, it is very difficult to incentivize affordable housing that way. So it really takes kind of a multifaceted approach to it, but focusing on making sure you're not creating those hurdles on your own through your zoning ordinance is one element of that. And then testing to see how those all those housing types fit into your community and still kind of embellish the character that you want, not take away from it, is the other important aspect. So it's a big balancing act.
And
There's no magic bullet though.
Thank you. I was going to ask if Matt wouldn't mind just touching a little bit on some of the tools that you've used in other communities with the character types, with housing and scaling up and down as needed.
Yeah, so we've just been able to talk about housing and density and design and all of those things as kind of creating a character. And then as we've created that character, we show how you can have different variations to create very thriving neighborhoods. It doesn't mean you have to put all of one type or go heavy on one type or another, and how you create sort of these other opportunities and other price points within a single neighborhood or a single community. I do value the fact that you said affordable and attainable housing, because a lot of communities I've worked in, you say affordable housing, and if you use the HUD test and they're such a high income community, the affordable housing still isn't attainable to whoever it is you're trying to house, whether it's your teachers or police officers, fighters and the like. And so one of the things I would want to do with you in this process is define what is the attainable target, because I think that can go a long way in terms of determining what we do. But as Grant had mentioned and the others, there's not like a silver bullet easy thing. Part of it is policy, part of it might be incentive, part of it might be requirements that you want to set up, again, clear expectations and trade-offs within your plan for maybe allowing more density along the Silver Line or something like that. But I do like the fact that you want to get ahead of it, because I do think if and when the Silver Line is built, and I think there'll be communities who will tell you this, if you're not ready with an affordable housing strategy, you'll get overrun and none of the housing will be affordable. So while I don't have the answer for you today, the planning process will be fun to ferret it out. But I do applaud you getting ahead of it now.
Fantastic. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Whitley.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And listen, thank y'all for a wonderful presentation. The mayor asked the question that I was concerned about, affordable home. And the other thing is that I see that you did projects for Wendell and Nightdale, and I'm down here now. I'm from Zebulon, North Carolina, and I'm in my old home place as I speak now, and I am very impressed with the Nightdale area. That was an area just east of Raleigh, pretty much like the suburbs of Matthews coming out of Charlotte. But the Nightdale area is booming and is a thriving place to seek to live. And I appreciate the design and work that you've done in both of those towns as well too. But thank you for your presentation, and it looks and appears that you will be a good team and that you're looking forward to working, and you have worked with us. And I appreciate that, but I just want to make sure that your whole team is inclusive of all of Matthews and all of the people in Matthews. Matthews is a rich town. I say that, and it is whenever you have homes that is starting at price range of $400,000. Not a lot of people can afford that, but we do have some areas in Matthews that are a little bit lower than that, but they're still proud of their community, and I represent that community, Crestdale community. I'm the pastor over in the community of Mount Moriah Church, and the people there are very much connected with the downtown. We're 3 blocks from downtown Matthews, and we are very proud of it, and we're proud of the Crestdale Heritage Trail, which has opened up a connectivity from downtown. So I'm looking forward to all of that developer, whoever we pick to come and develop around all of that and just make all that come together for the whole of Matthews. So thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitley. Yeah, I think you bring up a very valid point in that for you and your expertise, Christine, is the community engagement, making sure that we do reach out to everyone in the community. I made a comment to the last team that came here that sometimes when we have community engagement in this room, you have the same 20 people that show up that have the same socioeconomic background and the same ideas. So it's good to get that good cross section. Commissioner Tufano.
Yes, Jay, or whoever is running the slide presentation, would you bring up the slide regarding retail? There, whoop, there you go.
That one or the one before?
We can start on the one before it. Okay, I'd like to know more specifically how you are, or what metrics you're going to use in order to facilitate your study. These words are not quite that explicit. So if you would be so kind as to go into depth, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So to begin, we use cell phone data, actually. That's what we call our mobile data tracking. So in order to have fresh, refreshed data every quarter, actually. So we pull our mobile data every quarter. So this is something that is very indicative of post-COVID consumer behavior. Basically, if you have a smartphone and you have your location services settings turned on your smartphone, if you go into a geo-fenced area and you get a notification in an app that tracks your location, like the Weather Channel app, for example, it pings your location and then it starts to ping it everywhere you go. We're not getting your personal information, but we can aggregate all of that data to determine mobility patterns and purchasing patterns, as well as where people actually live. And so to determine where they live, basically it's where that cell phone is at rest the majority of the night, day after day. So it starts to associate that home location. So
that was my next question. So I was going to ask how the mobile data translated to the socioeconomic position of the owner of the phone. So you're saying that it's purely based on rest points at night. So in other words, whatever data you're receiving or whatever company is providing this information to you does not give you that mapping automatically. Is that correct?
That's right. And, for example, a college town, this map is actually of a community right outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. And so a lot of students, their moms and dads are paying that cell phone bill, and that bill is going to a different location other than Charlottesville, but it associates where that phone is at rest the majority of the night as the home location, and it tracks the user. So, so really, we can identify where they go habitually. You may notice on your cell phone, if you go to Chick-fil-A every morning to get breakfast, or if you go to Dunkin' Donuts every day to get coffee, you may get a notification that says, 6 minutes to Dunkin' Donuts. It's tracking your activity. So that's one layer of our data. But we also, we do pull in census data, of course. The most recent census was not very productive, and we're still, receiving information from the census, but we also get information from the post office, that shows kind of people's migration patterns in terms of where they may have moved and how recently. So all of these elements are layered. To determine the trade area, we will geofence a specific retail establishment in Matthews, kind of a general merchandise location, a grocery store a lot of times, or some type of general merchandise establishment, and track 1 year's worth of activity so that we can really see who are those everyday shoppers.
Okay, would you go to the next slide, please? All right, now, one of the things I'm not seeing, and hope you can enlighten me, is what is the retail mix that you're going to perhaps recommend based on the information that you're getting for all these different layers? We love our downtown. It's very vibrant, but as you can tell, it's very slanted to a particular vertical market. And in order for us to be a full fledged community where people can shop in all ways in our downtown, how would you arrive at the mix of retail establishments that you would feel as though would be best served for Matthews?
Sure. So where we begin with that is to look at supply versus demand. So within that custom trade area, so not just the residents of the town of Matthews, but those that are trading regularly in Matthews, we want to look at what they are buying in that trade area and what they are leaving to purchase. A lot of times that gives us a very confident conclusion that that use is underserved and can be supported. So for example, many times we see fine dining is we call a leakage, where people are going into some of the larger urban markets to go out to eat for that nice steak dinner. But we look to see how much money is being spent on that. Everybody thinks that they need a fine dining establishment downtown, that they need an ice cream store, that they need all of these things. So we look at, based on the demographics of those individuals in the trade area, what are they spending and how can we get what is leaving the trade area to return to the trade area? And so what we'll do is if we see that there is, $25 million of leakage in the clothing category, then based on our industry standards and expertise, we'll be able to determine how much of that could realistically be captured. You're never going to get every dollar of leakage. And then, what square footage is that use really needing? So for example, because retail is changing, a clothing store downtown does not need 3,000 square feet anymore. Gone are the days of the department stores, but rather they may need, 1,500 square feet, where 750 of that is floor space, merchandising, and the rest is order fulfillment for online orders. So we'll be able to really analyze that. So we don't come in and say, the most perfect downtown has a mix of, 80-20, whatever. We look at your existing customers and consumers and how can we, bring uses, how can we identify uses that will meet their needs, but that those needs are currently not being met in this trade area.
Thank you. Jay, a question for you is this plan or study primarily focused on the downtown area, or is it for the entire city limits of Matthews?
Are you talking about the overall comp plan, downtown plan, or just the market and retail analysis?
Well, in other words, these firms that we're interviewing,
Yes.
Is that their focus is in the downtown area?
So it's two separate documents. So we're doing both the comprehensive plan and the downtown. We're stacking them, so they'll be done simultaneously.
Okay, so a question back to the team then is the same level of analysis going to be on the entire city of Matthews as well as being focused on downtown?
So we will use the same approach and the same technology. Some of the data will be the same. So for example, that trade area is a larger area. So we believe that if those individuals are coming to that grocery store, that general merchandise store frequently, weekly, every other week, that too, that individual also can be a downtown customer with, wayfinding signage and proper gateways and connections, from the commercial corridors to the downtown, that those are your everyday shoppers. But then we'll also use that same technology, that mobile data technology, to look at some of your tourism hotspots, for example. So if there's a famous restaurant downtown or your park or maybe a tournament facility, if that area is geofenced, in our system, we'll look at over the course of a year, activity at that location. But instead of, throwing out those tourists, we're going to hone in on those tourists. For the custom trade area, we're only looking for repeat visitors, consistent shoppers. For the tourism insights, we're looking at everybody. And so we want to see what percent of individuals that visited that location live more than 100 miles away. What was the average dwell time in that location? What day of the week, month of the year was visited the highest? So that's some of the granular data in the downtown that we'll look at, in addition to things like walkability and real estate analysis as well.
Well, thank you for going into so much detail, and thank you, board, for allowing me to take so much time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, who knew our phones were giving up that information? My gosh. Burn this thing.
Keep those location settings on, please.
Yeah, I think I had my phone for about 5 years before I realized it was tracking my every move. Somebody said, "Hey, did you know you can go right here? It shows everywhere you went." I'm like, "Holy cow, does my wife know about this?" Commissioner Garner.
So we have invested a lot of time and energy into the downtown, and it's vibrant and appreciated, but it's left residents feeling, in other parts of town, feeling ignored or unseen and unheard. My question is, you've already answered how to get out there and talk to people and get feedback. So once you get that feedback, you're going to hear, residents' desires, you'll hear board opinions, and then you'll have, I would say, some of the movements in planning, or things that, the general sort of forward-thinking ways of planning. How, when you come back to us with all of that information, how do you pull it all together? And what are we hearing? Because I think, we all want to hear all of it.
No, that's a great question. And I'm going to reiterate this from Matt. I feel like he can probably put it the most succinctly about the questions about downtown. And if you could help us reiterate, sorry, lost my train of thought. Apologies. But Matt, I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about our experience with the city of Charlotte, working on their comprehensive plan, how we tracked engagement to make sure that we were hitting certain demographics, how we were collecting those ideas and tying them to goals, and how we were turning those into those policies. Grant, if you want to add anything there as well.
Can I interject before you move on? I'm sorry. What started me thinking about this was seeing Brooklyn Village in your information packet, right? And so I asked some questions similar to the other group that was here. As somebody who's not part of development and the financial side of it, I hear more of the community feedback. I know people who are affected by it. And so how do you tie that into the feedback in an honest and authentic way, so we understand what the impact of development can be on the community?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All good stuff. I'm going to roll a response into 3 different questions that I'm going to try to answer at one time. One, I'll start out by telling you, and Mr. Mayor, this goes back to your question as well. The last 2 communities we've worked in recently, we've created what we call the community dashboard. And the community dashboard, we look at certain traits of the community. So I'm actually in Garner right now because I had to find the closest dais I could. So I felt like I was with you all today. But as we're working in Garner, we're looking at the 10-year people have lived there, income, race and ethnicity, gender, educational attainment, and the like. And we've created a snapshot of what the community looks like. And then as we do our engagement, we've actually been tracking. We have an anonymous survey that goes out, and they get it from me in one corner of the room and they put their response in the other corner of the room. So we have no idea who did what. And we track at the engagement whether that's matching the snapshot of the community. So that's one way that we've been able to kind of maybe hone our efforts or sharpen the point if we need to within our planning process to make sure that we're listening to the entire community. Now, I weave that into the second part of the question that came in about, well, what happens when we're hearing different voices on a certain property or the like. One of the things I'll tell you, and I'm just going to reemphasize a little bit what I'd said earlier, while the downtown has its place as a document with standing published, within the comprehensive plan itself, we will identify multiple activity centers. And I'm thinking of things like the CPC campus or the sportsplex or the hospital area. And for those, we will give special physical type recommendations where, Meg Nealon is the counterpart, often will draw up lot, block, and building kind of concepts for that brings to life the stuff we have in text. So in that regard, some of the other people in the community who are like, oh, great, another downtown investment. Here's all the pretty pictures in downtown and the like. We will spread those out because frankly, you need to have a diversified development portfolio. You can't be just all downtown. You can't be all 74. You can't be all sportsplex, but how do all those things work together? So I think you'll see a more equitable distribution in our planning process and the deliverables we create, because we will be doing some design work, although conceptual, but some design work throughout the document. So throughout the community, because it's the comprehensive plan. The third item was how you deal with the competing interests. I'll put it that way. So whether it's the community, the developers, some other facet. And I kind of go back to the way we've started to approach planning the last decade or so, where Instead of me being the judge and deciding who wins and then advocating for it out in the public, we build it out in the open. So we might say, well, based on what we heard from the community, these type things are important in this area. Based on what the data is telling us, these other things are important in the area. Based on what developers told us, these are their needs and the like. And we can come up with different choices that are there. And in some communities we work in, if it's really that critical, we've programmed into our planning process what we call the Growth Choices Workshop. And we'll get to the point of saying, we don't know exactly what to do here. We need to come and have a community discussion about it. And when we do that, we actually put the multiple scenarios out there. Now, A, B, or C never wins. You don't just pick one and it wins. But based on what we hear, people like or dislike, we will be able to make a consensus scenario. And although some people may not be as happy with the outcome, they were part of the process and they'll understand the whys. And that's the most important part for me, is that if we honestly listen, we show that we put the effort in to evaluate some of those things, and we have a rational reason for why we went where we did. I just feel better at the end of the day with what makes it into the document.
Thank you. And I wanted to jump in and see if I could address that as well.
Please, very quickly, because we want to be equitable to both firms, and you're reaching the end of your time. So if you could go quickly, that'd be fine.
Really briefly, I love that you've asked that question. Just to keep it brief, that's a survey question. The question that you posed is a question that we would also pose to the community. Do you feel a sense of belonging in the community, right? So we're collecting that information. We're working with you all with shared goals and shared prioritization. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, Matt, also for addressing that as well. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation, and I guess we're gonna meet after you depart and have further discussion. But thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Jay, was it your intention that we would pick a firm tonight?
So we tentatively have on the agenda for Monday, selection of a firm. But if you want to take an opportunity to kind of chat here for a few moments and share thoughts about, reactions to each firm, I think they both obviously bring different strengths to the table. We're obviously continue to be impressed with both firms based on our evaluation of the proposal and what we heard this evening. So,
Mr. Tufano.
I just want to bring to everyone's attention that according to the new state law that was passed about 2 weeks ago, Larry and I are unable to vote. Those that come in remotely to public meetings are unable to vote. So I'm encouraging you not to vote tonight.
Yeah, good point. Well, we'll just have a discussion. I guess for me, this would be an extremely difficult decision. So I would like to lean on staff a little bit and see what you guys think. Know what I'm saying? Know what I mean? I mean, I think you have two highly competent, very good teams, either of which would do a great job. So do you guys have a favorite, or is it flip a coin, or who do you want to work with?
My first thought as we were listening to each firm was that how complicated these projects are. They're multifaceted, and that both had to go outside their own doors and partner with others to really bring a completely comprehensive package of deliverables, potential deliverables to us. There's not just this one magic firm out there that has all of these attributes. So the concept that this is not a process, I thought Matt just now explained it very well. That back in the day, you went away and you kind of crafted a document, and then you came back and you had to defend it to the public and constituents. And quite frankly, we were hoping that the board would make this decision. You are elected by the people, and we want this plan to reflect the will of our citizens here. Now, if you want our honest feedback, we're happy to share some of that.
Yes, we would like your honest feedback. I would. I think they're both great. I particularly like Matt. I thought he answered the questions particularly well tonight. Seems like a pretty sharp fellow. Urban, you got any comments? Sir?
When do I not have a comment?
That's why I called it.
I have worked with all these firms in some form or fashion over 25 years. They were both quite unique in some circumstances. I mean, Land Design tends to come off as being extremely professional, all their ducks in a row. They are the 800-pound gorilla in the industry, which to their brethren, they're always upset about that because they don't get a fair shake. And they're very confident. There's no doubt about it. But in the same vein, Cole, Janess, Stone, with their other partners, definitely a more casual, more personable, I think, to a lot of degree. And the fact that they talk more passionately about people and places until there were questions about data, you know, and so that made me feel like that they're concerned about the placemaking, they're concerned about the issue of demographics, they're concerned about the they use the word diversity in a very interesting complexion. Is in our comprehensive plans, we always talk about the multiple areas and really dial into it.
Mhm.
And they reiterated that, which I think is very important, goes to Renee's and from that aspect of it. So I tend to lean, they made a few faux pas, but I tend to lean to Cole Janess because it seems to fit better with the size and the scale and the personality of Matthews than Land Design does. That's
kind of the way I'm leaning as well. Commissioner Garner?
I am also leaning towards culture nest and now, you know, a handful of reasons why I think that more casual, more personable approach
Fun.
is
They're fun.
right. Well,
there we go.
I would rather have a fun package come back to us than something that is, you know, that reflects sort of the liveliness that we want of Matthews, right? You know, I don't want the academic sort of polished response. I think that there's that the community is in that sort of how that personable approach reflects that. And I'll say, you know, that we have seen Stewart in action, and I haven't been impressed with their imagination and what they came back with. That doesn't mean that they're not capable. It just means that that's not maybe what I see for one commissioner as how the direction that I think is going in, continue to go in. And also my questions were maybe slightly different. Organization. The second group, Culture Nest, came back with a very honest and authentic response where I felt like Land Design wiggled a little bit and was kind of uncomfortable in having a straightforward answer. And you know, I think that we all have to be comfortable in having difficult conversations, and it's not rise to that occasion.
I think you can tell from my questions, I have a great interest in making sure that we get a good slice of the community and get everybody's opinion weighed in. And I felt better with Cole Janess doing that than Land Design. Commissioner Tufano, I saw your hand there, sir.
Yes, thank you. I'll reply with my comment very succinctly. I thought the first firm's presentation would be quote unquote more professional and polished, but the second firm I thought was more thoughtful. And so I as well am more toward the second firm.
Wow. We're slowly pushing towards a consensus, it sounds like. Commissioner Whitley, you have a thought? Which one did you like better?
Well, as I share with y'all, I'm down here now in Zebulon, but I see what Nightdale, and I saw the project that they did, and Wendell, because I have one of my law firms that represent my farm is out of Wendell, and I've seen their development plan that they built for Wendell as well. And I am totally impressed. And you got to have lived here to see what Wendell and Nightdale looked like back when I was here and what it looked like now. I don't know if any of y'all travel through Nightdale lately coming east, but it is one of the most impressive. It's almost like Cary, Mayor. It is one of the thriving and upcoming places to live. And they got a little bit of everything you can want from one of the nicest hotels that I stay sometime when I come down here is there in Nightdale as well too. But I'm leaning
That's
toward.
hard to believe because, I mean, I'm impressed that it's grown that much. One of my very best friends married a gal from Nightdale. So I've been there very many times in the early 80s. And if you blinked, you would miss Nightdale. It was very, I mean, it was rural, small town without not a lot going on at all. 30
No,
years ago.
it's not that way now. If you came here now, everything that you will want, entertainment, food shop, everything that the big cities have, that Nightdale has now, just right off of Interstate 540. But it's very impressive. And Wendell as well also, because I've been out to lunch in some of the new development where they had retail mart along with nice homes and stuff. It's just very impressive, the work that they've done. And I'm leaning towards the second as well.
All right, Ken?
I also agree. I felt that Cole and Janess was the best. I like the way they answered very in depth. They seemed like they had a genuine care for it too. Like they were seemed much more involved early on. So I'm more excited about
So
that.
we'll go on to Commissioner Hoover. It's unbelievable. Wow. Well, I kind of think how you can how we might vote on Monday, Jay.
Yeah.
I'm feeling on the recommendation.
I'm sorry, I could not hear Gina's comments. Would she mind repeating them? Gina, would you turn your microphone on? Yeah,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I said I agree. They also seems like they have a heart for the community, and I like their presentation, what they had to say. And jokingly, I also said I like the fact that they were cheaper. So.
Good point. Good point. So yeah, I think that's amazing, but it sounds like it's 7-0 favorite of Cole and Janess.
It's wonderful.
So we'll vote on Monday officially to allow these gentlemen to vote.
Can we find out what staff thought? Now that there's no pressure.
You guys really blew it.
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Can you come to a mic?
I was leaning heavily to Stewart and land design until the presentation tonight. And I thought that Cole Janess did a great job. And as I said, I worked with Matt for years, and I actually worked on the Nightdale plan. And it is a great place. They've got an amazing park. So they are really doing great things there. And I can tell you that Matt knows what he's doing. And
No, he was kind of the difference maker for me. Yeah, he answered every question really.
Yeah. So, and
wisely.
he and also Meg Nealon, she used to work for land design, and she did do the drawings for us for Eastern Gateway. So, I mean, she's great. So I really think it was the presentation tonight made a big difference.
No, I'm going to throw my 2 cents. I think that the quality of work that I've seen from from Lorna, that I worked with her with the TOD stuff, she really understands the concepts that we're going for in town. I really respect John a tremendous amount. I think he does great work, and I've worked with Matt for years. And Nadine when she was with Matt as well. So I think they're a solid team. I don't think you guys could have gone wrong. I think either team could have really done a great job.
Right.
But I think for the character of our town, you all picked up on sort of the nuance of sort of the flavor of the team. So I'm confident that either would do well, but I'm very happy with, the consensus you guys have come to the table with.
Aaron or Rob, you guys got any comment?
Okay, everybody gets to weigh in.
Yeah, I'll make this brief. I had two concerns. That's what I'm gonna. Well, again, my overall leaning was towards Land Design and Stewart, but my concern with that firm was they do a lot of work for the private sector, and I wanted to know if I wanted to know if they could balance what they do in the private sector with what we're.
I'm sorry, which firm are you talking about?
Stewart Land
Okay,
Design.
okay.
I'm sorry. And then the Colton Nest, Bolton Mink, City Explained, six consulting firms was a concern of mine, not the quality, but the quantity. I think they're going to have to have a good manager. And from a staff perspective, we want to know who we're going to be talking to, and we want results in a fairly timely fashion. So those were just some concerns, but again, I think you can't go wrong with either one.
Great, thank you.
All right. I won't repeat everything that everyone else has already said. So I'll just go ahead and say I did kind of flip-flop between the two while we've been going through this process. I think both firms, they do focus on different things a little bit more than the other, but I do think y'all kind of hit it on hit the nail on the head when you kind of said earlier, it's like, which firm do you want to work with? Which one do you see working, like the town working with moving forward? So from what I'm hearing, I'm fine with everything that we've got going on right now.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, after the first presentation, I was like, wow, this could be hard to beat these folks. But then they just kind of grew on me, and the more I had to actually ask them to leave because I'm talking too much. But
So having a pretty good feeling which firm we're going with before Monday, we want to go back. I'd like to go back and look at the scope and make sure, in that I mentioned, I think Commissioner Weaver, you mentioned they were a little lower. Were they 230? Do you remember? I don't remember. 220. We want to really look at that scope, make sure we're getting everything we think we're getting out of it. And, because sometimes you work on these plans and there's these surprises. Well, we didn't really budget for the 3D renderings, for instance, all of those kind of like add-ons, they do add up. And then were there any items that you didn't hear about or any things that you would like to be a particular focus? I mean, we talked about market study, open space, downtown. Did you feel pretty good about the general scope you saw in the proposal? Okay.
I think one thing, and it was Matt that brought it up, is the multiple scenarios.
Yes.
I'm familiar with how they do that, but I'm gonna make sure it's baked into their proposal that if they get it come to a dead end, they're sort of like, okay, let's investigate this further and get a group back together. Because I think that's really important to kind of break the deadlock and doesn't make the board make a decision, nor you to make a decision. You can kind of vet it. And if it means there's multiple options on the table, that's fine.
Yeah.
And Dana, you felt good about the transportation piece from Colton Nest?
Yeah, I think that, I'll go over to Jay tomorrow.
She's going to go to the mic, guys. So you can hear her.
Yes, I feel good about their capabilities, and I'll go over with Jay what that transportation section actually says and make sure we're hitting all the points.
Fantastic. I think we have concluded our business for this evening. So thank you. Thank you guys for giving up part of your evening.
My pleasure.
Mark, get well, my friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And Larry, hold down the fort. Don't spend too much time in Nightdale. Come back to Matthews.
I'll be headed back tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This meeting
Thank y'all.
adjourned.
Thank you.
See ya. Sorry, you're breaking up. If you can make that about twice that size, or just hold it really close to my face. You write so tiny.